Hi everybody! I am so excited to bring you a tiny portion of our book review for this month. Maybe I should say this quarter. As many of you know, this was supposed to be our March book, but I may have estimated how much time and energy I would have to be able to read a 600-page book in 1 month while expecting my fourth child. So it didn't happen, but we are finally wrapping it up. So I'm really excited to bring you some of the info in some short chunks. In the past, I've done just one long book review, but this book is a bit different. And because, like I said, it's 600 pages, there's so much valuable information in it. So I wanted to kind of pull a bunch of these things together and kind of group them together. So I'm bringing some of that information today. I'm gonna have some more videos rolling out here in the next couple of days. And so hopefully we'll have this wrapped up here in May/June. But I really am excited about it, and it wasn't a burden to read this book because the first section was a little difficult to get through, but then after the first couple of chapters, I really found so much, not just insight, but so much interesting information that I feel like anybody can use, whether or not you're trying to diet or have tried to diet. No matter where you are, I think it's just really exciting and valuable research that he presents. So like I said, 600-page book, we're gonna break it down into chunks. I know some of you have asked, and I hope at some point to have the mental capacity and maybe the time to be able to put together a podcast style, because I know it's a little bit easier for many of you all to listen to this maybe in the car or while in a walk. I'm not there yet. Hopefully that'll be something that I get done by the end of the year. But like I said, having my fourth kid, I'm having to set realistic expectations for myself and for my time. And right now the content is what I'm focused on and what I'm able to do. So formatting, obviously, hopefully down the road, everything will look a little bit more professional. And hopefully I'll be able to kind of share it in ways that you guys are able to access better. But I will make sure to share the YouTube links so that you can listen. And I believe with YouTube videos, you can actually turn, if you're listening on your phone, you can turn it off and then hit play and listen to it rather than have to watch the video. So hopefully that's helpful to you guys. But all right, so today the topic that I'm focusing on is exercise. And I know when it comes to weight loss and dieting, exercise seems to go hand in hand. So I'm really excited to bring this information and everything that he's kind of shared in this book about the topic. I'm going to pull a couple things in that at least relate to the topic of exercise. I was super excited to get my first postpartum run in this morning, and I'll share a little bit about that in a few minutes. But I'm feeling back to myself to some extent, and I shared with my husband that it was the best first postpartum run that I've had after my 4 kids, and I think that is because of the shape that I was in at the beginning of pregnancy and the strength training that I've been doing in the last couple of weeks in preparation for my first run. I think I just prepared a lot better for this one. So that was a wonderful way to wake up and to kick off my week, and I'm so excited that I'm starting. I feel like I'm not starting at square one, and I told him I'm used to starting in like running 30 seconds and then walking for a minute and then running 30 seconds and then walking for a minute. And it's not super enjoyable when you're at that stage. So I was really excited to be able to skip a couple steps down the road and to kind of jump back in, not where I was, but certainly closer than I've been in the past. So, all right, so I'm gonna jump right in with a statement, a disclosure. This is something that we always gave in our coaching sessions. And it seems like common sense, but I just want to make sure I share this. Always make sure you're checking with your healthcare professional, especially if you are a man over 45 or a female over 55. If you have any sort of health conditions, or anything when you're exerting yourself, like chest pain, dizziness, anything like that, shortness of breath for sure, check with your provider before you start a new exercise routine. And make sure you're working closely with them and they're monitoring you for that. So, all All right, so we're gonna start with a little note that I loved, and I just hope that one day our world gets to this place. But there's a new study that suggested that drug companies should have to compare their drug against exercise. And the quote in the study was, as patients deserve to understand the relative impact. Yes, I'll trim your nail in just a minute, buddy. Okay, I'll trim it in just a minute, okay? Oh, that's my roll. Patients deserve to understand the relative impact that physical activity might have on their condition. I loved this, and this kind of draws back to several of the things he says earlier in the book when he starts referencing some of the diet drugs that have been on the market or are currently on the market. When he says, look, we're talking about drugs that may or may not provide a certain level of benefit, but the side effects that are being offered with those drugs are so detrimental that it's hard to compare when you have an alternative that has no side effects, like a whole food. And so, you know, it's like, why would you choose this drug when you have alternatives without side effects? So I just loved that. I mean, can you imagine a world where we see on the prescription label the comparison to, you know, 2 miles of walking or taking 1 pill a night for 6 months? I just think that would be awesome. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna throw out some facts about exercise. So this is really the way that his book goes. He says, look, here's an idea, we researched it, and here's what we found. And he gives tons of just little takeaways. You know, here's the best way to do this. Here's the best way to do this. If you're looking to do this, try this. And so this is just a bunch of quick tips, okay? So the best way to exercise, the best time to exercise is when you're fasting. So we found that actually you burn more fat over time, not necessarily in the actual exercise instance, but over the course of the day, you will burn more fat if you exercise when you are in a fasting state. So before meals is ideal for long-term fat burning, but that's only if you're exercising most days of the week. Otherwise, your body might compensate. So it's like, oh, she's expending a lot of fat, a lot of energy. We're just going to reserve some of this and burn it later. So we don't want our bodies to compensate. We want to kind of trick our bodies into it. So the more exercise we're doing over the course of the week, the more we'll be able to prevent our body from falling into that routine. And the other thing is, I know for many folks, it's difficult to get a run in the morning. Certainly even for folks who don't work outside the home, it can be really difficult to do that. I've started getting up early before the kids are getting up so that I can get that done ahead of time. But the longer my runs go, the harder that is because obviously I can't get up too early. The sun has to be up too. So he did say that it really just takes like a 6-hour fast. So you might consider, if you're working, you might consider having an earlier lunch, and then perhaps you can go 6 hours or so and be able to work out after you're finished with your work day and still have the impact of that fasted state for the fat burning. He recommends in warmer weather and in warmer temps. And so what that looks like is we have found that when our bodies are cooler, our metabolism ramps up. And what that does is it makes us hungrier. And so we tend to compensate with our workouts if we're working out in cooler weather or in cooler waters. If we're swimming or we're in an air-conditioned gym, we tend to compensate by overeating afterward. He said there's even studies that have shown taking cold showers after a hot workout will do the same thing. It will cause our body temperatures to drop, and then naturally we will eat to compensate for that coldness. So if possible, exercising outside in the summer and not in the air-conditioned gym, and exercising in the heated gym instead of the cold winter outside. So just some little recommendations there. So there's always a lot of conversation about whether it's better to walk if you burn more fat when you are doing a 45-minute walk versus a 20-minute run, which is better. And so he did, obviously show that the calorie differences between walking for an hour versus running for 30 minutes. But the intensity is really where we burn fat. So even though a run might be shorter, it's more intense. And so we are actually diving into those fat stores rather than burning off some of the fuel that we already have accessible. The reason being our bodies are very efficient. We were designed to do as little effort as possible, to have as little energy expenditure as possible, and in order to walk. Now, walking is great for so many things. It's easier on the joints than running, and so it's certainly a fabulous exercise option, and I find it to be just a wonderful mental de-stress. Walking, we go for walks with the kids all the time. It's one of our favorite family time events. But walking versus running, if you are looking at which will do more for me in terms of weight loss and fat burning, then the higher intensity is going to help. There was a little tidbit about high intensity interval training, and while it's great, they found that most people, unless they were at a facility that was holding them accountable to those workouts, they didn't actually do them at home. And so again, the more frequent during the week that you're doing it, the better you're able to trick and manipulate your body into not being as efficient as it wants to be. All right, and so for anyone who has any blood sugar related issues, if you've been told you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, there are some tricks to exercising and certain timings for exercising. So exercising after meals, as opposed to the fat burning benefit you get from being in a fasted state, exercising after meals will help to blunt our blood sugar spike from the meal. And so this is something to consider also for those of you who have maybe a birthday party that you go to and you end up eating a little more sugar than you're used to. You can really blunt that effect by exercising. And the ideal time is 30 minutes after eating and for an hour. Because our sugar spikes about an hour after eating. So basically, if we start 30 minutes after, we will compensate over, we'll kind of capture that amount of time if we're going for an hour. So let's say an hour family walk. So everyone who's getting out for family walks after Thanksgiving, dessert is served. That's exactly what you're doing for your body. And then he talks about, and this is a tip we'll talk about in a different video, but he talks about weighing yourself, that actually is a beneficial tool for weight loss. The reason being because you're able to kind of monitor what you're doing. And it helps you to know, okay, whatever I'm trying, is it working or is it not working? However, a scale may not be a great reflection of fat loss for when you're exercising, because while fat may be lost, you may be also gaining muscle mass. And however, the fat that is usually lost due to exercise is the visceral fat, and that's the dangerous fat that can surround our organs. It's usually the fat around our middle. So what may be more beneficial to kind of monitor how you're doing in terms of weight loss through exercising would be more measurements, like waist circumference measurements. In coaching, we always recommended when you are measuring that to go up your belly button. We ladies want to hold it up at our middle, our smallest point, our waists, but it really should be around that middle section, which is our belly button area. So that would be a great way if you are going to start incorporating exercise into your weight loss plan. Then that would be a great way to kind of monitor whether you're losing that visceral fat, even though the scale may seem like you're maintaining your weight or maybe even gaining weight. It could be that mass, that muscle mass that you're actually seeing reflected. Okay, so now we're going to dive into another section of exercise really quickly. I'm going to give you an acronym. It's called NEAT, N-E-A-T, and that's non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Mouthful. But it's basically all the stuff we're doing to burn calories that's not purposeful exercise. And so I'll dive into a few, here's a few examples. So taking the stairs, parking farther away, walking versus riding, laughing, dancing, fidgeting. These are all examples of ways that we actually burn calories that is not purposeful exercise. And actually, we will read this in the future, but the blue zones, I've talked about it at length on multiple different book reviews, but the blue zones are the areas that have the populations that live the longest across our world. And one thing they all have in common is movement. They all have movement incorporated regularly into their their routine. So frequently it's dancing, but laughing, you don't think about it, but that's burning calories too. So that's actually going to burn 5 times more calories than our purposeful exercise. Even the folks who are really deep into physical activity, it's still 5 times less calorie expenditure than our NEAT, our non-exercise activity. And so the equation, and I'll put this in the comment section, but the equation for kind of getting rid of body fat is equal to food plus beverage minus our metabolism, minus our exercise and other movement, including that NEAT. And I've got a little graph that'll help you kind of visualize that. I'll also put that in the comment section. So along that line, you've heard sitting is the new smoking. Well, that's not quite true, but it is definitely detrimental. We have moved from a active society to a sedentary society. And sitting at work all day or in any situation can be very hazardous. And his example is just like our muscles will atrophy from disuse, our arteries, we actually have arterial function that can, the phrase is use it or lose it. And once it's gone, you can't get it back. And so it's so important that we continue moving throughout the day. Fidgeting is movement. My husband, I've shared before, we got him a standing desk. Dr. Greger loves the treadmill desks, but that can be really cumbersome and really difficult for most people to be able to use. But he likes, there are pedal systems that you can put underneath your desk, and they're very quiet. There are fidget bars where you can, have your legs swinging underneath your desk. And some of these things are actually useful for children as well when they're studying, to be able to fidget, to help them concentrate. All that movement adds up over time and can help to avoid that arterial atrophy. So because exercise, I'm kind of shifting a little bit again, exercise increases our metabolism. Often we increase our food consumption naturally to compensate from that energy expenditure, and that often slows down our NEAT as well, our non-exercise activity. So that's kind of 2 reasons why exercise can sometimes actually hurt our attempts at weight loss, depending on how you're doing it and how often. So what I would suggest is, for instance, last week, I found that I had worked out really well. I was so proud of myself. I'd gotten in, several great workouts in the evening. And then I had this day where I was wiped. I was just totally slam wiped. And I found myself sitting all day. And that's exactly what he had been talking about, which was like, look, it's at the end of the day, you only have so many calories, and your body will naturally say, okay, you're tired, you're done, just sit. And so we'll compensate for all of the other activity by not doing that stuff. And the bottom line that he kind of talks about is exercise is great. It's extremely important, but it's not for weight loss. And so all of this leads him to exercise has just not been proven to be effective at weight loss. And there are for a lot of these reasons that we've talked about. It's great for so many a myriad of other conditions and reasons why we need to have exercise in our lives. We need to, for mental reasons, if nothing else. But at the end of the day, it's not really helpful. It hasn't been shown in studies to be helpful for folks who are really trying to lose weight. And here's the reality. You can't out-exercise a bad diet. So a piece of pizza has about 300 calories. That converts into about an hour of brisk walking per piece. And so how many people, here's another example, how many people have time to climb up an entire Empire State Building, 86 flights, in order to burn off 1 donut? And so when it comes to weight loss, the focus that needs to be prioritized is in really your diet. And we'll talk about this in another video, but the diet that he recommends, as you can expect and imagine, is a whole food plant-based diet. And he gives a ton of other tips about that, but his whole perspective is based on the research and the findings. Exercise is fabulous for all of these different conditions. And let me just read this directly from his book. Most folks who try to lose weight through exercise alone fail to achieve results and give up the attempt quickly. Exercise has many health benefits, including anti-inflammatory effects, which can also alleviate headaches, chronic musculoskeletal aches, and pains that disproportionately affect overweight individuals, but not a significant way to lose weight. For those with joint pains, losing weight before starting an exercise regimen will help avoid exacerbating those conditions. So basically, it's fabulous. Add it to your routine, but recognize that it's going to ramp up your metabolism. And unless you're compensating by, listen, my hunger is ramping up, but I'm going to, continue eating whole foods that are low in calories, then it might set you back on your plan. And what a lot of people find is if they think it's all about exercise, they dive into this really hardcore exercise. But as we discussed, that is a really small piece of the pie in terms of our calorie expenditure. And I didn't write this for some reason on my notes, but he talks about how the majority of our calories, let's say we're eating a 2,500 calorie diet a day, the majority of those calories are actually going to just existing, just breathing and pumping blood through our organs. That is really taking up the bulk of that calorie amount. And most of the remainder is actually in that non-exercise activity. And then there's just this tiny little fraction left. And that's what we are, using for our exercise. And that's what we're burning in our exercise. So it really is just a small piece of the pie. So in terms of what we're eating, there's just so much better way to burn fat and to minimize our caloric intake in that equation of calorie expenditure than exercise. So that's the bottom line. Exercise is fabulous. It's great for your mental health. It's a great way to socialize. It can help in so many other ways, but it's not ideal for prioritizing in a weight loss plan. So if you have any questions, there are tons of great videos that Dr. Greger has, even on this topic, on his website, nutritionfacts.org. I will link that below in the comments as well. If you have any questions, send them my way, and I'll see if there's some that are covered in this book, or if there's some that I can look up through his website as well. And I'd love to have the conversation going on in the comments. So that was exercise. We will move into a few other areas. We'll have probably 2, maybe 3 other videos on this book. But if you haven't already, I really encourage you to get the app that Dr. Greger has put together. It's a free app, and it basically takes you through all of his recommendations for weight loss, for dieting, and it's got a quick, easy checklist. You can put your weight in there if you're taking your weight, and you can check off all the different things that he recommends. And sorry, one more thing, hydrate. Hydration has been shown to increase fat burning and decrease protein breakdown. So our muscle, it preserves our muscle breakdown and uses fat stores instead. And he recommends about 9 cups of water for women 19 and over. I think it's at like 13 for men. And basically, instead of trying to monitor that, I've always struggled with that. I just try to keep water on me at all times so that as soon as my thirst hits, I just drink until the thirst is quenched. But he recommends just kind of monitoring your urine, especially for young people. That's a great way to help them to know how much water they need to be taking in. And you want your urine to look like the color of straw. Now, if you are actively taking B vitamins, we're taking B12 supplements and eating B vitamins in our nutritional yeast, our Nooch, it can alter the color a little bit. So that's something to consider. But hydration does definitely help with weight loss as well. So those are the tips I've got for you today. Give me a shout out if you have any questions or comments. I would love to hear them. And feel free to share if you have anyone who's interested in starting an exercise plan. I am on the Strava app. If you're a runner or a walker or a biker and you're on that app, feel free to reach out to me, and we can be buddies on the app and hold each other accountable. Don't judge my pace. I'm a slow runner, but I love it. So y'all have a great week, and I'll